do my very best to get this job that I so crave.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Fanzone Debate. Last week was crazy. Shit was wild. The multiverse took over. I don't know what happened. It was nuts. But it made me think, man, if the multiverse can get a different intro and outro, I think I can finally do it here in the regular verse. So, very excited about this match. We got a good matchup for you. We got Kaleb Boatman, who has just been, dying to play. It's not like this was the matchup he was supposed to get always. This is always what was going to happen for Kaleb. Nothing happened that would have made this any different. But he's playing Joe Harrison. So both of these guys, pretty good debaters. Haven't had a win in a minute, but they're both looking to get a win on the record in this title picking. So, Brian, you are here. How are you doing, sir? And what do you think about the matchup?
I am doing just great, despite the wall color. I don't think Kirk's just the other side of the room for me. But hey, how you doing, Kirk? No, I'm glad to be here. It's gonna be fun. Kaleb and Joe, really nice guys, both of them. I've definitely seen them play trivia. I think I've seen them both to debate at least one time too. So it'll be fun to see how this goes.
And Kirk, current Fanzone debate champion, you are here to judge this one. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. Spring's finally arrived here in southwestern Pennsylvania, and I was like, hey, I'm going to judge this match. I'll sit outside and do it. And I was getting all set up, and then my neighbor brought on his lawnmower. So screwed those plans up. So I'm back inside, staring Brian in the face across the room here. But it should be fun.
All right. Well, let's bring in our players. We'll start with the lower ranked player, Joe. Joe, welcome. The last time we saw you, you were playing Ryan O'Regan in a very close match in the last two title pictures ago. And but it was a very close match. It was a fun match to be a part of, and you're back now to play Kaleb.
Yeah, feeling okay. I'm excited to play Kaleb, but he's a great debater, great trivia player, great all-around guy. So I'm just excited to be in this match and just have some fun with it.
Awesome. All right, well, let's bring in Kaleb. Kaleb, the last time we saw you, it has been a minute, not multiverse-wise, because we've seen you in other multiverses playing in teams and then playing in matches where we're talking about Paul Giamatti or something and helicopters and crazy shit. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Kaleb, the last time we saw you was when you played Nick Twohig in the tournament last year. So it's been a while. And then previous to that, the last win you got was against Nazario, who actually ended up challenging for the belt later.
I don't remember playing Nazario.
That was round one of the tournament, and then
I do not remember that. I believe you that it happened, but I just do not remember that whatsoever.
You've blocked it out of your memory because it was too beautiful of an evening to keep up there. You can't have that. Anyway, you're playing Joe. How you feeling?
Cool. I miss Joe. I feel like I used to see Joe way more, and now it's like I never see him. I miss Joe. Joe's a cool dude.
Awesome. I agree. So let's get into the match. Here's how this is going to work. The players drafted categories, and then I gave them some questions based on those categories, and they're going to debate them tonight before our very souls. So each player will get a 1-minute opening, followed by 5-minute freeform, followed by a 1-minute closing. At the end of the debate, Kirk, Brian, and I will write on our handy-dandy boards who we think won the point. Best 2 out of 3 points or votes wins the point, and first person to 3 points wins the match. If we are tied coming out of the prep questions, of which there are 4, we will go to a bonus question to decide the match. So, gentlemen, do you have any questions as we get into it? All right, let's do this thing. All right, we are going to kick it off right away with the category of comedy. This was drafted by Mr. Boatman. The question is, what 1960s comedy best deserves a remake? So, Kaleb, you drafted this. You are going to get to go first. You have 1 minute to start your argument when you start talking.
what film should be remade, right? That's the question, right? Is do you want to remake, a film that is already great, or do you want to remake something that's really good but has a glaring flaw that you can fix that flaw? And that's why I'm going with let's remake Breakfast at Tiffany's, because we all know the big problem with Breakfast at Tiffany's, and it's Mickey Rooney. It genuinely, I've heard pretty much everyone say this would be a really good movie with the exception of Mickey Rooney's character is kind of racist, and really racist and uncomfortable, and also just not funny, and just completely takes you out of the movie and ruins it. Let's get rid of that and fix that. Like, let's improve a great movie and make it incredible.
Okay. So we'll move over to Joe. Joe, you now have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
So when I was going through my head on what movie deserves a good remake, I took a little bit of risk and I was like, let's do a movie that had already gotten a remake, but because of that, it even deserves another one even more. I'm going with 1963's The Pink Panther. It's a really good comedy, but it can be improved upon. And when they tried to do it with Steve Martin in the 2000s, it didn't work. So it deserves another remake because it can be even better. And it shows that we can do more with it than what we got in the 2000s. And The Pink Panther, while it has a very interesting take and an interesting plot, I think there's a lot more you can do with comedic sensibilities, timing, put more twist, add a little bit, elevate the story a little bit more, create more comedic timing, create more of a mystery with it. And you can do that with a lot of interesting elements that you can do with that while still keeping the core of the Pink Panther at its presence. And that's why the Pink Panther deserves a remake the most.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, you have 5 minutes freeform. Don't talk over each other. I'll beat you with a stick, and I'll be back in at 1 minute to give you a warning.
There's no direct flaw in the Pink Panther that says, oh, yes, this deserves a remake. I have a direct flaw in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and that's Mickey Rooney. That's the thing. You're saying, oh, you can do this and this. You don't need to do that stuff. The Pink Panther's already there. There's a direct flaw in Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Well, there is a direct flaw of Breakfast at Tiffany's. You can always just keep Breakfast at Tiffany's as is and say, yes, this was a piece in the cultural zeitgeist at the time where we made a glaring mistake. Let's not do that again. And you can address the flaw of Breakfast at Tiffany's without having to remake it. With the Pink Panther, it's a story that you can remake and you can elevate upon, but without just taking. You're saying that all you need to do to take away one element at Breakfast at Tiffany's to make it good. That doesn't really say it deserves a remake. That just to deserve a remake, you need to be able to do something more with the story and something that elevates it rather than just take away an aspect of it and say, okay, now it's good as is. That's not really deserving of a remake.
I mean, if you're remaking a film, you don't want to remake something that's already good because all you're doing is just wrecking it. Again, they tried it with Steve Martin. That's not good. At the end of the day, Breakfast at Tiffany's, we are taking something that's flawed. And we can also do things to elevate it. We can change the relationship with Paul because that doesn't necessarily work either. There's different things that you can change while still keeping it good. Again, you still haven't given me a main flaw in the Pink Panther that needs changing. And again, you're saying, oh, it still worked. No, it doesn't. If you go back and you watch Breakfast at Tiffany's, it is so uncomfortable and so hard to watch, and it takes you out of the movie. I've seen multiple people try to watch Breakfast at Tiffany's, and they say, this just takes me out of the movie. It actively ruins the movie.
Well, you can say it takes you out of the movie. It also can show you an insight into the filmmaking process and how, like, during that time it can be problematic. It's a part of film history for a reason. And yes, we can address the cultural issues of Breakfast at Tiffany's without remaking it. When you're going to remake the Pink Panther, it's just updating the story and creating modern sensibilities for it, and it deserves it more because it proves that there's a shot to remake it and do better than we did with the 2000s. With Breakfast at Tiffany's, I think it's more if we examine it and can have discussions around the film. If you remake it, you pretty much are going to take away those chance to have the discussions around it and the problematics of it and talk about it.
No, because the film still exists. We're not saying, oh, let's take the film out of existence. We're not doing that because the film still exists. You can still watch the original. We're just giving you a way to watch it and experience it and elevate and change it while not having to deal with that character. And I think that is a big improvement. Again, you have not given me anything that says the Pink Panther deserves to be remade, because there's no flaw in the Pink Panther or nothing wrong with it. You're just saying, let's update it to update it. That's how bad remakes happen, is let's just update it because you can update the story. Like, no, the Pink Panther is great as it is. Why try to wreck a movie that doesn't have any specific flaws?
It's not going to wreck the movie by updating it. It's going to give a chance to like have people view it in a modern light. And with your essentially creating a shot for shot remake with Breakfast at Tiffany's, except replacing the character, it's going to be what happened with Psycho when they tried to remake another movie from the 60s and said, let's just do it like the same, but you're only changing one aspect of the movie, and that's not really what you're going to do with like how a remake should happen.
I've never said this should be a shot-for-shot remake. As I even said, you can change some of the aspects with the character of Paul. You can change other things. You can update and you can elevate. Ultimately, I'm just saying that's the one glaring flaw that we can take out and get rid of that would immediately improve Breakfast at Tiffany's, and everyone would agree that would improve Breakfast at Tiffany's. Again, you're not giving me anything for Pink Panther. You're saying, oh, yeah, like you're saying, let's update it to update it, basically. There is no actual reason you are giving me anything wrong with the Pink Panther. You are giving me that we should fix. You're not giving me anything on Pink Panther except let's just do it to do it.
So I think what we need to do with the Pink Panther is, with a lot of it, we have a lot of bumbling with the Detective Clouseau, and it's more of a physical comedy. I think with making it a mystery and having it be more of a cerebral comedy, make it more dialogue, have it be looking through the processes, and then have Professor Clouseau still have Detective Clouseau still have those comedic sensibilities of physical comedy, but having also a mental aspect of it can make the remake even better. You're just saying that let's take out one thing and just pretty much have it be the same, and that's really like not deserving of a remake.
Strike it from the record. Joe, you get to close first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
Well, there's that glaring issue in Breakfast at Tiffany's. You can still watch it, and it's going to be a good movie. And just remaking it by taking out that negative element really doesn't say it deserves a remake. With the Pink Panther, it deserves a remake because it's a story that can be retold and can be updated. And while you can still have those comedic sensibilities of the physical comedy aspects of it, you can make it more cerebral. You can have more of a sharp wit to it, and you can do that. And it deserves to be updated and retold. And it's a story. With Breakfast at Tiffany's, it can exist in its time capsule, exist as a piece of Americana to just talk about and just be like, why did we ever let this happen? It doesn't deserve to be remake, because when you're going, it doesn't deserve a remake just because of one glaring issue. And something to deserve a remake, it needs to be a story that needs to be retold in a different version. That's not just changing one aspect. And you can say what you want about the Paul character, but Mickey Rooney's the only really area that you were focusing on. And I will concede the rest of my time.
Okay. We move over to Boatman for his 1 minute closing. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
The reason I mainly focused on Mickey Rooney is because it's so obviously bad that, yes, let's get rid of the thing that makes Breakfast at Tiffany's so hard to watch. That doesn't mean that we still can't talk about the issues and dynamics, because, again, the original film still exists, but there are other things we can elevate and update to it. With Pink Panther, there's nothing wrong with it. Why are we touching something that there's nothing wrong with? And Pink Panther already is a cerebral comedy. What are we talking about? There's a lot of like wordplay and dialogue in there. And I just feel like Pink Panther is something we don't need to touch. It's great as it is. We don't need to mess with it. Why are we messing with it? Joe has not given us anything, any type of this doesn't work, this doesn't work. He hasn't pointed out anything specific about the Pink Panther. I've given you multiple examples on Breakfast at Tiffany's and why. Let's make a watchable version of Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Okay. I will bring in L Judges. You good, Kirk?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I'll go first. I thought this was a very clear-cut example of a debate where somebody opens and they like lay the groundwork of what the fight is going to be, and their opponent just kind of follows suit and can't really catch up at all. And that, so I gave my point to Kaleb. I thought that just like from the get-go, he was able to define what he thinks a remake should, why a remake for Breakfast at Tiffany should be a thing. And Joe's main argument against it was the whole like preserving cinema thing. And I thought Boatman very handedly said, we're not getting rid of the original Breakfast at Tiffany's. You can still use that as an example of crappy stuff that was going on in the 60s. So I gave it to Boatman. Kirk, you go next.
Yeah, this was a frustrating fight because, like you said, Boatman came out and said, my movie has a flaw. What's your movie's flaw? Go. And I don't think that's necessarily the best way to address this, but Joe let him take it that way and went down that road. And he kept saying, give me something, give me something. Joe came on at the end and tried to do something, give him a little something as to why his movie gets made. But I think in his closing, Boatman shot that down well enough that Boatman controlled the fight. So I gave it to him.
Okay, so Brian, your vote doesn't count, but where would you have gone?
Yeah, I voted for Kaleb as well. I just thought, like you said from the beginning, he kind of laid out why his film needs to be remade. The main one being Rooney, and they gave some other specific examples. Joe never really got into specifics. It was a lot of just general talk about updating, the mystery, things like that. And then, as Kaleb said, his main argument seemed to be updating it to update it. And I liked when he said that's how bad remakes happen. So yeah, I voted for Kaleb.
Okay, so Kaleb wins the first point, but we got a lot of questions left. So let's get into the next question, which was drafted by Joe in the category of Disney. The question is, what Disney movie from 1970 to 1988 is the worst? Those were the parameters given. So, hey, who am I to say no? Joe, well, actually, I'm the showrunner, so I am the one who can say no. But we're a lawless country here in Fanzone debate. All right, Joe, you get to go first. You have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
So I went with the Aristocats from 1970. The reason I went with the Aristocats is when I think of worst Disney movies, I think that the worst thing a movie can really be is boring or forgettable. And the Aristocats is both of those. When I was going through movies during this time frame and I looked at them and I was just like, wow, I can remember most of these movies except for the Aristocats. It's just very forgettable, very bland. Nothing really about it sticks out as a memorable Disney moment. When you think about Disney movies always have something memorable about them. And there's really not that much in the Aristocats other than there's the whole like, oh, she's giving her fortune to the cats. And then the butler hates that, which is very reasonable. Why would the old lady give her fortune to animals instead of, this human being who has helped take care of her for her most of her life? And it's just the worst because not only does the framing device of it make it is very weird and discombobulated, it's also just not memorable other than its framing device at all.
Okay. We'll go over to Boatman. Boatman, you have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
What is bad, right? I think there are two types of bad, right? There's the boring, forgettable, bland type of bad. And then there's also the annoying, obnoxious, barely watchable bad. But what if a movie was both? The Black Cauldron absolutely fits both of those parameters because on the boring, bland, bad side, it's a bunch of forgettable fantasy mumbo jumbo that ultimately goes nowhere with bland characters, things you've seen a million times before. And on the annoying level, shall I introduce you to Taryn and Gurgi? These are two of the most annoying, obnoxious Disney characters of all time. Taryn is whiny to the 1,000th percentile, and Gurgi has one of the most obnoxious voices you will ever hear from a character.
Time. Okay. Aristocats versus the Black Cauldron. 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
I'm going to push back on you saying that there's not much memorable in the Aristocats. I think Obviously, Everybody Wants to Be a Cat is a super memorable song. O'Malley, I think, is actually a really fun, cool character. I like all three of the kids. I think all of O'Malley's friends, Scat Cat, is like a lot of fun. I think that the Aristocats has a lot more than you're giving it credit for.
And I can say the same thing about the Black Cauldron. The Black Cauldron has one of the most memorable Disney villains being the Horned King. The Horned King is creepy and he's iconic, and just the Black Cauldron itself, the cauldron itself is very memorable, and it's stuck with me all this time throughout the year. If it tells you anything about how forgettable the Aristocats was, I forgot that Everybody Wants to Be a Cat was from the Aristocats until I rewatched it. And that's when I remembered, oh, this song is from this movie. That is how forgettable the Aristocats is.
I think that's just on you not knowing that Everybody Wants to Be a Cat is from the Aristocats, buddy. I think very famously that song is from this movie. But also let's take your points of what is great about the Black Cauldron. The Horned King is iconic. No, he isn't. No one remembers do you ever hear people talk about the Horned King? Nobody talks about the Horned King. The Horned King does nothing. There's ultimately nothing that you can give me that the Horned King does. Like, I guess it's a design. It's even not that. It's just a cloak. It's not even that interesting of a design. And the cauldron. What about the cauldron? You're just saying the cauldron's good. What about the cauldron?
Being able to look through the cauldron and seeing the prophecies and the destinies and the way it's animated and the way the art style for the Black Cauldron as a movie is very just nice to look at. And the Aristocats, it's not. When you look at the Aristocats, it's just very bland and stale. It's a very neutral color palette, except for a few scenes, but it's just very neutral to look at. It's a neutral tones and color palettes. But with the Black Cauldron having this fantasy aesthetic and this fantasy, you can at least look at the Black Cauldron and remember it for how it looks too.
Ultimately, no. It looks like every generic fantasy. It looks like Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. If we're being honest, that's what it looks like. It looks like every generic fantasy. It looks like they're trying to copy Don Bluth. It just looks like every generic fantasy thing that's going on. Also, on your point that, oh yeah, Aristocats isn't memorable, Black Cauldron clearly isn't that memorable to you because it's not even the cauldron that really shows you the future. It's the pig, because if you put the pig in any water, that shows you the future. So ultimately, not that even memorable to you from your perspective. The Aristocats, you've got the fun songs. You've got O'Malley, the alley cat, who is actually having a real fun time. You've got the geese, Adelaide and Amelia. You've got a lot of actually fun characters going on. In your movie, it's either all bland stuff we've seen, fantasy stuff we've seen before, or it's the two most annoying characters in all of Disney.
They are not. Gergie and Taran are not. And Gergie's sacrifice at the end of the movie is one of the most heartfelt moments in a Disney movie. When he sacrifices himself, that is I cried. That is actually very heartfelt. His sacrifice at the end of it, and when the Gergie sacrifice hits you.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's like, oh wow, an annoying character died. Just because a character dies in a movie, that's not a plus. That's not anything. Yes, a character died in that movie. They give nothing to actually care about Gergie because you're like, Gergie wants to do this, Gergie wants to do that. It's one of the most annoying things ever. They're not giving us anything on Gergie, that's you're saying, oh, it's sad. No, it isn't, because they didn't give us anything to actually like Gergie.
Yes, they did. He's a very loyal friend and a loyal sidekick. You say that there's only and if you want to go with annoying characters, Duchess is a very annoying character in the Aristocats. That's not that she is very annoying and very whiny for a lot of the Aristocats, and it's also very forgettable. That's the only thing I can even remember from the Aristocats is Duchess being annoying at. Besides that.
Duchess doesn't whine once in the movie. I don't even know what you're talking about. Duchess doesn't whine. She's very proper, but she doesn't whine in any moment. I just don't know if you've seen the Aristocats is the problem.
No, I've seen the Aristocats. I just
pointing out things
don't remember it
because it's very proper. It's it's Ava Gabor doing the Ava Gabor thing, and she's great at it. You've got the dynamics between her and the three kids who all have the art, the singing, the piano. There's a lot of really fun ideas going on in the Aristocats. Your movie is either bland fantasy tropes or it's Taran being whiny and annoying or Gertie being annoying.
Time. Oh boy. All right, Boatman. You can close first. 1 minute when you start talking.
The Aristocats has a lot of things going for it, right? You've got O'Malley the Alley Cat, who is like just this kind of fun, cool, chill character who ultimately, has to kind of go from being this, bachelor type alley cat to actually kind of changing his mode. And I actually think that, to being with Duchess and being a house cat. And I actually think it's a pretty fascinating dichotomy of where his character actually goes. And he's actually a really interesting, cool character. You've got all the kids. You've got Duchess, who I actually think is kind of an example of, let's take a proper character out of their environment, but she's not whiny. She's trying to take care of her kids, but she doesn't really complain once in the movie. The Black Cauldron is just, think of all the fantasy things you've seen before. Let's take Secret and little bit Secret and Nim, little bit Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, little bit Jason and the Argonauts. Put that, it's just bland, and then just add 2 annoying characters. It's awful.
Time. All right. Joe, we'll move over to you. 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
It's not bland. It's not awful. Taran and his character arc that he goes on from being this assistant pigkeeper who you can say is whiny in the beginning, but by the end becoming and stepping into his own right and being able to stop and being able to learn how to accept Gurgi for who he is and all the other characters he meets. And the Horned King's design is different. You can say it's bland and awful, but it's not. And it's not take the Secret of Nem. It's not take a little bit of take a little bit of the Hobbit. It is the Black Cauldron. It is itself. It is about this Black Cauldron that can raise the unarmed dead. It's about Henwin the pig, who has the oracle powers. It's all this stuff, and Taran stepping into his own and finding his place in the world. While with the Aristocats, it's just a guy was upset that his former master is giving all of her money to cats, and then the cats learn to survive on their own. It's not that memorable. It just is bland, and I can't remember anything from that movie, but the Black Cauldron, I can at least remember moments of it, and being memorable makes it better than that.
Time. Okay. All right. Let's judges, do you have your votes?
I'm almost there.
All right. I'm ready. One second.
I'm good.
Okay. Brian, we're going to start with you because your vote didn't count last time. Where are you voting and why?
Both definitely boring, bland, forgettable movies. I will agree with that. I did end up going for Kaleb again. I think that he did a good job, even just in the opening, of saying how, Joe made a good point of how the worst kind of movie is one that's just bland and boring and forgettable. Kaleb added that his is all those things. Plus, it's got the more factor of being annoying, things like that. I know Joe tried to bring up things like the Horn King being iconic, things like that, which Kaleb shot down quite handily, as well as kind of a kill strike, which was when he pointed out that Joe couldn't even remember his own movie because it was so forgettable.
Okay. I also am going with Kaleb Boatman, pretty much for literally every reason you said. The kill strike there with the not remembering the movie was a big one. Not that it matters to the argument, or not that it matters now, but this did delve into a lot of like what movie is more memorable versus like which one is just like plain bad, which I guess does have like some effect on it. But yeah, I think Boatman's takedowns of how iconic the Horned King is and the obnoxious characters, and even when Joe would then try to say like, well, my character is obnoxious and does this, Boatman gave us pretty good examples of how that was in fact not true. So Kirk, your vote doesn't count on this one. Where would you have gone and why?
Actually, with Joe on this one, I feel like Joe, they both put a lot, but I feel like Joe was bringing up things like, the design and the character arcs, and I think Boatman's defense was just like, well, no, it's not. And I think just overall, Joe had more. It felt Joe was fighting more in the positive for his movie. I feel like Joe had more good things to say about his movie than Boatman had to say about his. Although I feel like Joe missed a huge opportunity since the last fight. Kaleb wanted to remake his movie for racism, and this movie has a lot of racism problems. So if Joe would hit that, I think that would have helped him a lot.
I was waiting for that to happen, and it did not, and you reminded me, so thank you. Okay, so Boatman is up 2-0, so Joe needs to hit this question in order to stay in it. If Boatman hits this third question, he will win by knockout. So the question was drafted by Kaleb. It is in the category of YA. And the question is, who is the best member of the Cullen family in the Twilight series, excluding Edward? So no Edward for this question because we all know he's the best. So we're going to start with Kaleb on this one. Kaleb, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I'm lagging a little bit, so can I leave and come back?
Yes.
Just because I don't want to like cut out middle of an argument or something.
You good? What happened? Where'd you go? What was wrong with him?
What is that tube that Boatman keeps having in front of his computer?
No idea.
Me either.
Boatman, what's that tube that keeps coming in front of your screen?
Oh, this is my phone charger.
Oh, okay. I don't know if you're like on an IV or something.
No, that's I mean, you never know.
All right. All right, Boatman, we'll get started with your open.
Okay, I'm going with Carlisle Cullen. I think Carlisle Cullen is one of the most like fascinating characters in the Twilight series, and anytime we really get a glimpse of him, is one of the most like fascinating parts of those, like really the good things of those awful movies. Because I think really it's just a fascinating idea. This guy who is a vampire, right, has this craving for blood and flesh, and decided to go against that grain and start basically a vegetarian vampire family, in the sense of we are going to do things right, do things, morally, like not, sucking blood at people, because he feels this pain when he does it. And he's trying to teach his quote unquote kids to do things correctly. And there's a lot of like really interesting moral dilemmas through Carlisle.
Time. Okay. We'll move over to Joe. Joe, you have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
I went with Alice. Alice is, with her ability to see the future and all of that, she does become the best, because not only does she use that to help those she loves and those around her, she also is a very close and caring confidant to Bella, and is one of the most welcoming members of the Cullen family to Bella when she first meets her, and becomes really a true friend. And her loyalty to not only her family but to Bella, and her sense of protectiveness for those around her, is what makes Alice the best character, and is just who she is as a person when she's interacting with her family, and her loyalty to everyone, and how she makes sure that she uses her gift and her powers for the right reasons and to help those around her. I will concede the rest of my time.
Okay. My dog trying to eat my phone, which is also my timer. Okay. 5 minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
Your main argument for Alice is her loyalty. Carlisle also has that loyalty to Alice and his whole family. He's incredibly, or loyalty to Bella and his whole family as a whole. He's clearly very protective of Bella. He doesn't want anything to happen to Bella, as you can even see that in the first movie. Ultimately, you're not giving me anything that Alice has over Carlisle.
But the big issue with Carlisle, and you bring up this moral dilemma and how he's a morally good character, he turns people into vampires without their consent. None of these people asked for this curse to be thrust upon them, and for him to not have the moral obligation to ask these people if they are okay with this curse being thrust upon them, right there, he can't be the best, because he's taking away a sense of agency from these people that he claims to care about. He has created his whole family on false pretenses of he's doing it to help them, but he has cursed them for eternity now.
Ultimately, right, we're looking at the dichotomy of moral a moral dilemma doesn't always mean that the character is 100% right, but Carlisle's doing what he thinks is right, and that's what makes it so interesting. But he clearly isn't sure, as you see when he talks about turning Edward, he is kind of conflicted of, am I doing the right thing? But if I don't, Edward's just never going to get to really experience life at all whatsoever. And that's the interesting dichotomy. That's what actually makes it interesting and is complex.
But it's not interesting and complex because he doesn't even get to experience the full life because he is now forever stuck as a 17-year-old having to hide this horrible secret that he never wanted in the first place. That's what Carlo has done to these people. He has given them a curse and has taken away any sense of normalcy from them. You can say he saved their lives all they wanted, but he didn't. He turned them into cursed beings that are never going to have any sense of normalcy. That's why he has to go out and start changing other people just so they can have more people to interact with for the sense of normalcy. That's not a good character. That doesn't make him the best. He is doing things.
You're making it sound like this is a character who just goes around and starts biting people. That's not what he's doing. He takes people who are on death's door. It's not like he's looking around for it. And he's actually weighing the options here. And he's actually doing it. Alice doesn't have, and also I do want to just for the record, because we're getting kind of into the weeds here, the question is not most moral character or, what character would you most want as your best friend? It's best character, as in best character, most interesting, most complex. And that's what we're looking at here. And Carlisle is clearly that. Alice, as you even made her sound like, is just kind of, yep, she's the friend. Alice is the friend. She's loyal. Where's the interest in that? Where's the intrigue? Where's the complexity? There's nothing in that.
No, the intrigue and complexity especially comes within the second movie of when she knows that Edward thinks that he's protecting Bella from being with her. She has the dilemma of, does she tell Bella what Edward's plans truly are because she wants to help Bella, or does she let Edward do what he thinks is right because she loves her brother? That complexity right there, and when she has to test her loyalty, and you see that in the second movie, is very interesting. In that the comedy that you see with her and having to decide what's right, and then ultimately deciding that Bella and Edward being together is what's right, and that's how she needs to help her friends, is very interesting to see. But we never really see that with Carlisle. All as we see with Carlisle is a very standard, cut and dry, patriarchal, I will protect my family character type.
I mean, even if we go based on your arguments from 2 minutes ago, that's not what we get from Carlisle. You're contradicting yourself already. No, we're not getting just a patriarchal archetype. We're getting a lot of complexity. And also Carlisle has all the information that Alice has, so he has the same dilemma. Ultimately, and you even said the second movie, that's a movie that Alice is like barely in. Ultimately, Alice has all the advantages you're giving for Alice are also the advantages of Carlisle.
1 minute.
They are also the advantages of Carlisle. That's the thing, is Carlisle, it has the advantage of Alice, but with more complexity.
But we never really get to see those with Carlisle. Whenever we see Carlisle, it's more of him reacting to information that is given to him. We never see him really have this whole be a whole character within himself, except through his backstory. With Alice, we get to see her being this whole complete character when it's not just reacting to the other characters, and when she's going on her own journeys and her own stuff within the franchise, within the third, fourth, and fifth movies as well. But with Carlisle, we only see him as he turns people into vampires, and now he has this family. That's the only two real moments we get with Carlisle as a character.
But within those moments, we get a lot of complexity and intrigue. And as you're saying, it's only reacting. All of Alice's stuff is pretty much just reacting to Bella. She's not a very active character. It's all revolving around Bella and Edward.
Time. All right, Joe, you get to close first on this one. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
While the story does revolve around Bella and Edward as a whole, Alice still has her own agency within that story, and you don't really see that with Carlisle. When Carlisle is always presented, it's always as the father character. Alice is not only presented as the sister and friend character, she's also presented as this character who has these powers and is using them to help people out. As we see when she starts looking for another half vampire child within the fifth movie to show the Volturi, when she is able to show the Volturi the errors of their ways and what will happen if they keep going on this quest to destroy the Cullen family within the fifth movie, you get to see that. With Carlisle, it's just, I turn people into vampires, now they're a family, but we do things the right way, and I used to be, and that is it. That's really all you get from him, and there's not very much complexity within it other than I sometimes struggle with turning people into vampires. He just didn't have to turn them into vampires. That could have been the moral limit. Just like, if you think there's going to be a question about it, just don't do it. And with Alice, you get to really see her evolve as a character and realize that she's not, that she has to be more than Bella's friend and Edward's brother, and that she has to be something in between both.
In between both, striking from the record. We'll bring in Boatman, who has 1 minute to close his argument when he starts talking.
even as you talk about Alice just finding the vampire child, she's doing that with Jasper. So that's not really that. But then that's revolved around Bella and Edward. Alice's whole identity is revolved around Bella and Edward. So no, she doesn't have a lot of agency within the story. Ultimately, Carlisle, as we see, even if we are at a point where we're towards the end of his arc, we still, when we get those flashbacks, that's getting us the pieces because Carlisle's already a completed, fully developed character, but we still get those pieces of how did we get to where he was. And that's what's so interesting about Carlisle is we do get the dichotomy and the moral intrigue and the complexity. And it's not just, should I or shouldn't I turn people into vampires? There is so much going on with Carlisle because he wants to be protective of Edward, but he's also very curious. He's also like, but I want my son to be with Bella. And that's where there is so much moral intrigue. Alice is just the friend.
Time. Okay. Bring in the judges. You go there and you go there. Okay. Okay, we good, judges? Kirk, you need to go first on this one.
Okay. I'd like to say nobody gets the point. Correct answer is none of the above, and Edward's also awful. But I gotta give somebody. I think I went with Boatman. I think Boatman just had the right. Sometimes it was just the right answer, and he had it. But you got to defend it to it. He did. He just gave so much more as to not just he gave both within the movie why he's a good character, and also as a viewer watching what makes him a good character. I think he hit home both of those. And I just think Joe had some stuff for Alice, but I don't think he had as much material as Boatman did to work with.
Okay, Brian.
I got out of trivia at the right time. I have not seen any of the Twilight movies except the first one. I think I saw once way back when and don't remember anything about it. So I'm going purely by the arguments of these two people. And in the end, it came down to the basic closing argument, and I actually thought that Joe made a little better argument for the fact that his character had some evolution to where the character went, whereas Cullen was just kind of they're the same person at the beginning and end.
Okay, well, unlike Brian, I've seen these movies a lot, and I think unlike Kirk, I think these are the two correct choices. When I wrote the question, these were the two that came to mind. There's arguments for some of the other ones, but I think that these were the two correct answers. I think that what kind of won it for me was one of the things that Kirk actually brought up was like why as a viewer we like watching Carlisle and his story, but also in the moments of the movie, like what Carlisle doing overall is good and interesting and is a good character. I thought that Joe had a lot of good stuff for Alice, but I think that as somebody who's seen these movies a lot, there was a lot left on the table that Alice does bring that wasn't brought up at all. So I also went with Kaleb Boatman, which means your winner by way of knockout, Kaleb Boatman. So we will start by talking to Joe. Joe, one of those days, man. Didn't go your way, but you played really well. You split the vote on two of the questions. How are you feeling?
I mean, I'm feeling I'm feeling okay because Boatman's a great competitor in whatever he does. So to even split the vote on two questions, I'm very happy with that. I would have liked to have gotten at least 1 point overall, but to just being able to get a vote off of Boatman's an accomplishment personally. So yeah, I'm excited to see what he does going forward in this title picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, it was a pleasure having you. We'll see you again soon. We'd love to have you back. Great job today. Let's bring in the winner, Kaleb Boatman. Kaleb winning via KO. I believe I'm looking right now to find out if this is your first KO. So how are you feeling about the match, sir?
Good. Yeah, Joe did well. I'll be honest. I feel like Alice was like the correct answer, if I'm being honest. Like I won it when that question was like, oh man, he's gonna take Alice and I'm not gonna get Alice. So I'll be honest, I did not expect to win that question, so I'm happy I did. But Joe fought great. Yeah, I'll be honest, I fully expected us to be tied and have to go to speed rounds. So I'm happy this went there. Joe's a great competitor.
Yeah. So this does mean that you're going up against Robert Kastner. How do you feel about debating Kastner and the rest of this picture?
No comment.
Okay. Great. So Boatman, we'll see you soon with the next match. Let's get final thoughts, starting with Brian.
I will say that although this match it ended up being a knockout, I thought I enjoyed listening to both of them debate. And I also think that between the two of them combined is one of the most animated debates with all the hands and
That's true.
I was getting dizzy just watching them debate, but it was a lot of fun and had fun watching.
Kirk, final thoughts for you.
This was definitely the push your hair up bowl, but that's all right. They both. I mean, I voted for Boatman once, but or twice. But even the ones I voted against Joe, he was so close. He was just a few inches off. So I think it's closer than this final score is going to look. And I think Joe, if he tightens up his game a little bit, can do some damage here. But Kastner versus Boatman is going to be interesting because they have their styles are going to really going to clash. So I can't wait to see this.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today at Fanzone Debate. We got another match in a couple weeks for you here. We have Adelaide Spence going up against Jacob E. West. Both of those players in the negative column trying to get a win on their records. And then we also have Richard Schwartz going up against Cody Newberry. So Cody debuting earlier in the year going up against Richard, who just beat Barr. So it's going to be a good couple matches, and then we'll get to see the aforementioned Robert versus Kaleb. So lots of fun stuff coming up. We'll see you real soon with the next matches. Until then, have a good one, ladies and gentlemen.
There we go. Thank you very much. Please come again. We have a lot more groceries.